So, good morning, you guys. AEW Wrestle Dream is next week, and there's definitely a bunch of matches that they can put on the card. So, I want to go over a list of matches that they should put on the card for AEW Wrestle Dream. I think one of the first matches that they should have on the card, but they're not doing, is MJF versus Hangman Adam Page in a Texas Death Match. And the reason why I say that they should have done this is because a lot of people are saying that was really convoluted with how they just made the issue between Samoa Joe and Hangman Adam Page be a situation where Joe felt that he got disrespected because of a tag, and then the title being dropped or whatever. One was his trios title being dropped, really. So that's kind of like a little let's horse shit. Let's speed up the shit. Let's get to the match, really. But I think that you have like MJF actually come back, and then he cashes in the his title opportunity, and then he actually wins, and you have like a final match between them at Full Gear. I think that would be the way to do that, really, because that's good storytelling. But also, too, you do what you're supposed to do, which is you have the Casino Gauntlet match, you have the title opportunity, you have somebody win it, really, and then you can kind of have MJF just like saying, the ratings go up. I've started movies, I've done all this other shit, really. And what have you done, Hangman, outside of just, being a lame-ass champion? And what kind of champion are you? I go down to Mexico like every single week. You go down to Mexico like once a year, really. So there's a lot of things that you can kind of really tie in. The next match that you can do is, it's not on the card, but I think they're going to do this, which is Mark Briscoe versus Kyle Fletcher for the TNT Championship match. And there's two things about this that a lot of people are saying hardcore match. No, because the problem is, and I agree with what Jim Cornette said about Mark Briscoe, that he can do a lot of shit in matches. There's a lot of potential to him. He has the voice of an angel with like his, like Kid Rock, Slim Shady mix voice, so, and that's Southern twang as well, really. So that's Southern Delaware twang, So the thing about it is you can't always have Mark Briscoe in hardcore matches and other shit like that. So it would be good to show some self-control, really. And I think that I was saying Anthony Bowens, but I think that eventually Mark Briscoe needs to be the TNT champion. He should be the next person in line for that, I feel, because you got to also kind of like elevate him too. Like, what is the future of Mark Briscoe? And also with Mark Briscoe, he's probably the only person on the roster that's a single star. That's not part. I mean, he's part of the conglomeration, but he's done enough to show that he's a single star. You're lacking a lot of single baby faces. But Mark Briscoe, Kyle Fletcher, that'd be a great match. They're both hard hitting people. You can even have a match where they bleed a little bit, but they don't do too much. But there's something to that. The next match is that I have Mascara Dorada versus Clone 2. And Clone 2 is the evil hologram, the red hologram. So I'll probably just call him the red hologram. And the reason is that, you're going to do hologram versus the red hologram. But what happened was, unfortunately, hologram got injured. So, that's very, very unfortunate. So you have to be like, okay, what are we going to do? Is he going to just like pal around the Don Callis family for months upon months until hologram comes back? Or actually, are we going to show what he can do? And it's actually more formidable if you show what he can do. Like, for example, when the Great Khali was in WWE, they had a bunch of matches with him, just burying people and doing that, like that, like double-handed choke slam. And then you had the match with him and John Cena, really. So you need to build like this hologram clone up to the best possible version to be like, this is the ultimate threat, really. So why the fuck not have him go through a bunch of luchadors? You can even do Clone 2 versus the red hologram versus Orange Cassidy. That could work. You can do the red hologram versus Commander. You can do the red hologram versus Bandito. You can do the red hologram versus somebody else, really. So I really think that could be something. The next match is Jurassic Express versus the Young Bucks. They've had, they're leading to something. So, have the payoff, have Jurassic Express get over in a big way. It's kind of being set up, really. I'm going to have some cry me a river if you don't like me taking a sip of that. The next match is Andrade versus Kenny Omega, and there's two things that they have to do. This is a big match for them because First of all, I've not liked how Kenny Omega has kind of disappeared a bunch of times. Like, he was not at All Out. He's a Canadian wrestler. He should have been there. And then also too, he came back for the anniversary show, but he's not on Wrestle Dream. So, fuck him for that, because the company needs every big star possible. They need every draw that they can, really. So you can do Andrade versus Kenny Omega, because Andrade attacked Kenny Omega. And then the other thing about this is that you can actually should have Andrade win, because you can say to yourself, oh, we're going to treat him like Josh Alexander or other wrestlers where they're just there to be there, and we're not going to have him win. So you have the difference between making him a Brian Cage, somebody who loses a lot, and the upper echelon of the Don Callis family. Then the other thing about Andrade is that he just debuted. So, and then also you can prove to your audience, okay, well, if people come back to AEW, we'll figure them out, really. We're not going to do something like, okay, well, he's not going to matter. He's just going to be home for a long time and whatever, really. We're going to try to get it right this time. There's also two matches that I don't have on my list, but I'll talk about them. Three matches, actually. I'll do you guys a favor. The first one is they're doing an eliminator tournament tonight, and what happens is that if Okada and Takeshita lose, what happens is that Okada has to defend the Unified Championship against either Bandito or Brody King. So I think if you do Brody King and Okada, that would be a great match. And then if you do Takeshita and Bandito, I would like that as a match, really. Those would be really great options, because, Takeshita and Bandito, yes, you did that. Not a lot of people saw that match in person. You can have a rematch. People would be okay with that. Okada and Brody King, they had a match before, but, you can do a rematch and something like that. That could be interesting. Or you can do something where you have Okada and Takeshita, they actually win, and then they have a match with Brodito. And that could be a good thing as well, because a lot of times when they do these eliminator matches, you have to beat the champion twice. I think they've never had, I think 100% of the time, they always had the contenders lose the first match, really. So this is going to be the time when they actually have these guys actually win, not just once, but twice, really, because you can switch around the title a little bit. You can do something with the Don Callis family, like give them the tag team title and say, hey, it's any two members. And then eventually you get the Full Gear where it's a rematch. And then you can have Okada and Takeshita, malfunction. The titles go back to Brodito, and then you set up Okada Takeshita at World's End. And then you set up Takeshita as a babyface in 2026. But there's a lot of matches there, really. The other match that I don't want to forget about is that you're doing the Blood and Guts match. And the way that it works is that two people go in, and then it's 1-on-2, 2-on-3, 4-on-5, and then 5-on-5. So you should have a match where you pick all the women out who are going to be in this. And you may do like a triple team match, and the winner of the winning team gets the advantage, really. So you can have the Triangle of Madness versus like maybe like three different women, like Queen Amanada, Jamie Hayter, and maybe Toni Storm throws herself in this, or somebody else, really. But I think that would be the match to have, really, because you need to honestly build a crescendo. You need to build some excitement. You need to build some crescendo to Blood and Guts. You need to advertise that on your show, get people excited, put the eyeballs on it, sell out that bitch, that 20,000 seat bitch in Greensboro. The next match is Mercedes. The next match that I have is the trios titles, and what I want to say is that. Like I did this another video. You have a really great trios division. So right now, Samoa Joe is going to be facing Hangman Adam Page. So you can kind of do a tournament, or maybe in the dark matches you can have a few trios matches, and then you can have like a semifinals. Like you can do like say, okay, well we're gonna have four trios teams. We're gonna have like four trios teams. And then they're going to have another match later on tonight. So you can do like Dalton Castle and the Outrunners, MXM Collection, the Death Riders, and, like all the members but John Moxley. And you can also do, like maybe Hurt Syndicate or Ricochet and the Hurt Syndicate or something like that, really. And they can have like a four-way match, really. I mean, they can have like a match on the two matches of the pre-show, and then they have one match of the main card, really. And you could probably do something like MXM versus Dalton Castle and the Outrunners, and then you can do something like maybe like Ricochet and the Gates of Agony versus like versus the Death Riders or something like that, or the Hurt Syndicate versus the Death Riders, and then you get to like and then you get to a match like maybe it's like Dalton Castle and the Outrunners versus like Ricochet's team or the Hurt Syndicate or the Death Riders, and then the winner of the match faces the Ops at Full Gear. Or even like you even have Blood and Guts if you want to do one match, stuff like that. Like, and this is good because you have a lot of really creative and interesting trios teams, and they have like a lot of personality and stuff like that. Let's take advantage of that. Rebuild your divisions. Like that's the way to beat AEW, really. That's the way to like stand against WWE. Rebuild your divisions, and this will be a right way to build the trios division. With Mercedes Moné, this is a difficult one because she's not really been facing anybody. So you can do one of two things. You can have Mercedes versus Willow Nightingale. And I think that's a really fair match to have, really. Because it's like, who else do you have? And you can do something where you could have like, you can have something where one of the women, one of the heel women like Triangle of Madness or Marina Shafir attack Willow Nightingale. And then Marina Shafir joins the heel team for Blood and Guts. Willow Nightingale joins the babyface team. And then you're off to the races with that. Because I think that then, because I really think that one match they need to have is Willow Nightingale versus Marina Shafir. Like that's been in the oven for a long time, really, and there's going to be a point where you can't do that match anymore. So you can set up Mercedes versus Willow Nightingale. Marina Shafir fucks up for Willow Nightingale. Willow Nightingale, Marina Shafir on opposite teams in Blood and Guts. And then you guys do and then they do a street fight in New Jersey, like New Jersey street fight or something like that, really. Or I don't like or Newark, New Jersey, or East Rutherford, like or Elizabeth, New Jersey street fight, like like the most dangerous neighborhood, and the most dangerous neighborhood in New Jersey, you name it after. Since you're going to do the Outrunners, since you're going to do Joe versus Hangman, why not do Hobbs versus Claudio? Because a lot of people were talking about that match. That could be something as well, really, because, big man versus big man. I want to go back to something that I said. If you do a trios tournament, you can also have the Don Callis family in that as well, really. So Josh Alexander, Hechicero, and maybe like Lance Archer or Rocky Romero or somebody, whoever, in that. Another match that I have is Edge and Christian versus FTR, tables, ladders, and chairs match. He attacked Beth Phoenix. You could do something like where it's like, intergender. It's like, it's Beth, Adam Copeland, and Christian Cage versus Stokely, and FTR, really. Or you can do something where they find a female heel like Nyla Rose or something like that, like bring her back, or find another like villain on the roster, or even like Bozilla or whoever, really. And then I also will say that with all that said, really, they have a couple of weeks to the show. They have a lot of shit that they can do, really, and I just think that, as I said, that they don't have a big draw, really. I think they're probably gonna be around like 5,000 or 6,000 people. I think they're close to 4,000 if I'm correct for Wrestle Dream, but that's not a really good draw, really. But ultimately, you have to show that shit matters, really. You have to really show, hey, you know what, Wrestle Dream, it's not one of the, it's like Dynasty, where it's just a show to have a show, really. It's not one of the biggest shows of the year, really, but you really have to give a fuck, so definitely, you put matches, you build things, you build a trios division, which I feel is severely lacking, and then you have matches. The other thing that I want to say too is that they're also struggling a little bit because there's also an issue with their tag teams. So you also kind of ask yourself, what, should they have a couple of tag team matches? Should they build a few tag teams? Like, what if you have the Acclaimed on the show versus Rodito? What would happen if you had the Acclaimed versus the Don Callis family? What would happen if you had the Acclaimed versus, LFI or whoever, really? Like, you can do something with the Acclaimed as well, really, because you should start having more tag team matches to build a tag team division. You should have some trios matches to build the trios division, make every division strong a little bit, and also some women's matches. Or you can even do something like say, hey, you know what? There's going to be 3 matches for the women's on the show, really. So, it's the Triangle Madness, and they have one-on-one matches. So you can say one member, you can have like Tekla versus Jamie Hayter on the main card. You can have like Sky Blue versus, like Sky Blue versus Tony Storm, or Sky Blue versus, Queen Aminata. And then you could do like, Julia Hart versus, I don't know, like Harley Cameron or another babyface woman. And then you have 3 separate matches, but then you total them, like, whoever gets, you total those matches. So like if the bad guys get 2, then they get the opening advantage in Blood and Guts. Or if the babyfaces get 2, they get the opening advantage in Blood and Guts, really, because you really need to set up these things. Like, there's so many different like creative options that they should do, really. So ultimately, too, like, make Wrestle Dream matter, and then you're gonna get people come in, really. Like, as I said, Wembley Stadium to sell out. I'm more like the tickets are gonna go on sale in a couple of months, really, maybe December, really. But they have to really make sure that 90,000 seat bitch is sold out, really. So I do hope that they just get their shit together with this, because I think that it's gonna be a really great pay-per-view. They really just have to give a fuck, and that's the big thing. Do they really give a fuck, or are they just gonna, like, piss in the wind and spit in the wind on the show?